Jordan Love is going to play against the Cleveland Browns, and playing the starters is the right call for Matt LaFleur and this team.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn Jobs. They can help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Jordan Love is going to play on Saturday against the Cleveland Browns in the Packers preseason opener. And this was a question over the course of the Matt LaFleur era, what was going to happen. And one of the reasons was this was a veteran team over those years. Certain veteran players did not want to play in the preseason. And we're not gonna get into all of the politics of that or the politics of that particular person. We're not gonna do it. That's not what we're here to do. But we do know that in the Matt LaFleur era, except for the COVID year, the Packers regularly came out flat early in the season, especially in week 1. Last year, the guys played. And they come out first week and they beat the crap out of the Chicago Bears. It is hard for me to look at that and not think there is some sort of correlation here, especially when the modus operandi around the league has become just sit everybody. How does it not affect your readiness to play week 1 that you have not played meaningful football in a game setting for 9 months? Joint practices, it's not enough. Certainly training camp, it's not enough. It's why exhibition games, shout out to Bob McGinn, who never liked to call them preseason games, they're exhibitions. It's why they exist in the first place. And they also exist because you've got a 90-man roster. You've got a lot of guys you got to play. You want to get some work with those guys on the field. Of course, that's part of the deal. But now you have to walk that line. And the reason I even wanted to talk about this is because there is a decision to make. There wasn't last year. You just didn't know enough about those players, about that team to go, well, who were the guys you would even sit? Like, okay, Jair Alexander, Kenny Clark, Rashawn Gary, Elton Jenkins. Those might be those basically the only proven guys on that team last year. So who was there to even sit? Like, you had to play Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks and Christian Watson and Romeo. I don't think all those guys played a ton of snaps, but you had to play the rookies, the first year, the second year players, the UDFAs. You had to play them just to know what you had. There was no sitting because you didn't know who was going to play. You didn't know, like, how do you sit the starters when you don't know who's going to start? How do you sit your important players when you don't know who those guys are? Now, we have a better understanding now of who those guys are, but they're still trying to figure out who offensive tackle 3 is. We're going to talk about that later. They're still trying to figure out exactly what this receiver rotation is going to look like. They're trying to figure out who's going to play linebacker, who's going to play safety. You need these reps to figure that stuff out. But this is a team ready to compete in the NFC right now today. So I don't want to make it seem like it is just the clear and obvious choice to play your guys and not worry about it and throw caution to the wind, because that's not a prudent way to handle this either. If that were the case, then you just say, play all 3 games. Our guys are going to play. We don't care about the backups because they're backups. Like that. That's not how this is going to work either. The starters are going to, by and large, I think the starters, it makes sense for them to play some amount. Just to get your feet wet again, just to get back on the bike and start pedaling a little bit, to remember what that game action feels like, what the speed is, what it's like, especially on defense, to tackle someone. The tackling in the early season is always so bad because you don't live tackle. Most training camps, guys are not live tackling. And so if you're Jair Alexander, if you're, maybe Xavier McKinney won't play. If you're Kenny Clark, when was the last time you brought a ball carrier to the ground in a live setting? January? It'd be nice to have a live rep or 2 doing that in the preseason, but you have to balance it with the risk. So I want to see Eric Stokes out there back getting his confidence, because he's not going to be going up against the best players in every game. Go press the crap out of whatever backup Browns receivers are going to play. Who knows? Maybe it's Brandon Ayuk. We don't know. He's not going to play even if he's on the team, but go out and do that. Get your confidence up. I loved what he said yesterday at his locker when he was like, your resume is your film. And, we don't want tentative stuff on there. We don't want to be a tentative defense. That's what they seem to be under Joe Barry. This is the attitude adjustment we've been talking about all summer and back to the spring since Jeff Hafley arrived. They need an attitude adjustment. Actually, we've been talking about this since last fall. So for the Packers, there's still plenty to iron out here. And that includes starters, linebacker. We need to see Isaiah McDuffie and Quay Walker play together. Quay Walker has not done enough to sit in the preseason, which means Tyron Hopper, who is getting some first-team reps now because Edgerrin Cooper is dealing with a hamstring injury. You hope that that's not serious. Did a little bit on the side apparently yesterday at camp, but I would say right now it seems less than 50-50 he's going to play on Saturday. Well, then you need to see someone like Tyron Hopper, what kind of a play you can get from him. We need to see Javon Bullard play next to Xavier McKinney in a perfect world. We may not see that, but you still want to see Javon Bullard play. You need to see Evan Williams play. The sooner you can see Keaton Oladapo play, the better. Tucker Kraft back at practice, but has not participated in camp. So he's, going to be 2 weeks behind by the time that he, gets to be a full participant. It'd be nice to get him out there. But he's a good player who is going to have a part in your offense. So you do have to balance that risk. So, okay, go out, get your reps, play a series or 2. I don't think we're going to see even a quarter from these first string guys, but there are a lot of guys on the second string who are probably going to get a lot of run, and they need it. We need to see Kadeem Telfort. We need to see Caleb Jones. We need to see Andre Dillard. We need to see Evan Williams bottled and bond. We need to see a ton of Tyron Hopper. He needs every rep he can get in this defense. We need to see the backup interior offensive lineman for the Packers, what that looks like. I want to see Sean Ryan at center. I want to see on the first team, I want to see Sean Ryan at center. Jordan Morgan, was out yesterday. And so, we're going to see what these guys have. They need the reps. The rookies need the reps. So there's that fine line to walk. I understand that. But we saw last year, they didn't play the preseason scared. They just said, let's go. And they had less risk because they didn't even know who they were risking at that point. Maybe if they knew Jaden Reed was going to be as good as Jaden Reed was, or Dontavian Wicks was going to be as good as Dontavian Wicks was, maybe those guys would have played less or practiced less or whatever it was. Now you have a better idea. So you can modulate this a little bit differently, but I still think playing some amount of football with this young team, we're not talking about Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. This young team playing some amount of football, some is better than none. But understanding too much, there is a line. and you don't even want to approach that line. You want to be well back of that line. So a couple series, get out of there, and then give the ball over to all these young players fighting for spots on this roster. That's what I think you're going to see, and I think that's the prudent way to handle this. Speaking of the receiver pecking order, we try and make sense of it, and reasonable projections. That's next on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time, an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which means getting tickets is faster and easier with Game Time. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. With last-minute deals, you can save up to 60% buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Plus, you can get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time and get a good deal while you're at it. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On Packers your first listen today. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Get daily insight on the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. There were these AI projections of Packers receivers. And they were, crazy. Crazy. Christian Watson, 65 catches, 959, 8 touchdowns. Jaden Reed, 72 catches, 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. Romeo Doubs, 48 catches, 720 yards, 7 touchdowns. Dontavian Wicks, 55 catches, 802 yards, 5 touchdowns. Bo Melton, 35 catches, 494, 3 touchdowns. Look, that's not going to happen. That'd be over 4,000 yards, 29 touchdowns to receivers alone. That's not even getting to the tight ends, the running backs. Jordan Love would have 40 touchdowns and 5,000 yards pretty comfortably if those were the numbers. But it did make me think there could be some records potentially in play in terms of number of guys who hit, X thresholds. They had the record last year for most guys. I believe it was over 400 receiving yards. It is remarkable how much talent is on this team. But they are going to have to find a pecking order in some way, because not every guy has the same skill sets. And so you're not going to call plays the exact same with every guy on the field. So Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs each had over 90 targets last season. No one else had more than 60 targets last season. Christian Watson had 53. Dontavian Wicks had 58. Dontavian Wicks played 15 games. Christian Watson played 9 games. So how do you extrapolate that? Like if you double Christian Watson's games, because he wasn't 100% for all of them, is he going to get 100 targets? Can you just extrapolate that out? Bo Melton played in 5 games. Got 1 start at 24 targets. Can you just triple that? And all of a sudden he's getting 60 targets? And all of a sudden he's got 45 catches? I don't think that that's a reasonable way to do this, because at a certain point, Josh Jacobs is going to get the ball. He's going to get thrown the ball. Luke Musgrave is going to get the ball. It makes me wonder, and we've talked about this a little bit on the show about, do they have to play more 4 receiver sets? Do you want to play Jaden Reed in the backfield? Do you want to get a little bit crazy with some of this stuff? Do you want to run more from empty? Do you want to play, 4 receivers and a tight end, 5 out, true 5 out? By the way, that seems really fun to me. They played more empty at the end of last year than I remembered. I went back and watched some of it recently. Went back and watched the Cowboys game in particular. And against teams that wanted to blitz them, they were like, look, we'll go 5 out, make you declare and go. And the play that Matt LaFleur has been talking about over and over is the zero blitz call that they had against the Cowboys. He changes the play, throws the touchdown to Dontavian Wicks. Apparently the same concept that they scored Christian Watson on against the Chiefs in a somewhat similar situation. That was more lower red zone. But Jordan Love has the tools in the toolbox to manage an offense like that. The question is, how much does Matt LaFleur want to change his identity? And this has been something that Matt LaFleur has shown the ability to do over and over and over again. I mean, the offense in 2019 was not the offense that they ran in 2020. And then the offense that they ran after they have one of the most efficient per drive offenses of the last 15 years. Aaron Rodgers wins the MVP. They go into 2021 and they change the offense again. Now, did they, scrap everything? No, but they made adjustments because teams made adjustments. And so they leaned into more of an RPO world. And it was a lot of Aaron Rodgers, making changes at the line of scrimmage and getting them into perfect plays and making calls, canning calls, two play calls at the line of scrimmage. And, I was on the show talking about how I thought it was overcorrecting for the way defenses were playing. And I felt like it was because of a certain desire to play a certain way over another way. And look, Aaron Rodgers did not want to play the way that they played in 2020, even though it was really good for the team. Just didn't. Does not like to turn his back to the defense. Did not like all the play action in there, even though the shot plays worked. Just did not want to play that way. And they were able to find a balance. Matt LaFleur was able to find that balance. Credit to Matt LaFleur. 2022, the rookies, the different skill sets of those receivers. They changed the offense again. Then 2023, first-time quarterback under center, first-time starter anyway. A bunch more of new receivers, new skill sets. And they changed the offense on the fly multiple times during the season. And so I do think Matt LaFleur wants to, still wants to live in a world where he can play balanced, where he can play two tight end sets, where he can play two running back sets, where he can play under center play action. But we've seen him be flexible enough that when the personnel calls for it, and when the personnel shows themselves to be capable of it, that he will make the necessary alterations to the game plans and to the approach that they have. So far, it's not like we've, had a lot of opportunities to see them play these wide open, versions of this offense. I don't think, in the preseason, we would see that, even if that's part of the plan. Week 1 against the Eagles, I would spread those boys out. Make those linebackers and safeties cover in space. And I would do that with big personnel. I would make them cover Luke Musgrave. They have the secondary to at least make your receivers work. They don't have the linebackers or safeties to do that. So I still want to live in 21. In fact, I was just on, or in 12 or 21, I was just on an Eagles podcast. I don't know when that, if it's even aired yet. I think he said he was waiting on it. But it's really interesting to me because the way that this defense, and this is just an aside, wants to play is a lot of single high safety, man coverage, and that's exactly what, if you're the Eagles, you want teams to do. Play single high and let us huck it deep. It's the only thing the offense could do last year because A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are awesome. Jalen Hurts is a really good deep ball thrower. Are the Packers going to show us who their defense really is in week 1? I don't know. I think that they may rope-a-dope us a little bit unintentionally. I don't think they're going to do it on purpose. But the optimal way to do this with this defense, I think, is going to be not giving them big play opportunities, but you're also going to have to stop the run, and that's part of the deal here. If you're going to play man coverage against Jalen Hurts, that's a tall ask for your linebackers to be able to run and cover enough ground to corral Jalen Hurts. Back in 2020, that was one of the biggest problems. They actually played more man coverage in that game than Joe Barry is used to playing, and it cost them because Jalen Hurts just ran all over them. So I wonder if offensively we're going to see something similar early in the season where they don't play that way just because it's not always the most advantageous way to play against certain defenses. But I think, again, there are defenses in this division, in this conference where that is going to make sense? And is it a off-speed pitch that the Packers are going to go to? It was in 2021. They played more 4-receiver sets than we'd ever seen them play, and then Randall Cobb got hurt and they weren't able to do it. I think they can do it. I think they will do it. I just don't know whether we'll see it early. That's the interesting part of this. One of the players that I thought the Packers could have and would have been smart to sign on the offensive line got signed. We try to figure out what's going on with the depth pieces there and what the options are. We'll do that next on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions to apply. Thank you for making Locked On Packers your first listen today. Now go listen to the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Get daily insight on the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. You can find the link to Locked On Fantasy Football in the description, so you don't even need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Connor Williams signed with the Seattle Seahawks, and he was an interior offensive lineman that I thought made sense for the Green Bay Packers. Someone who could play guard, could play center, and I am worried about where their depth is right now, because they just don't have the reliable options at offensive tackle. We talked about this yesterday. I think their potential starting five is better than last year, potentially better than last year. I think Rasheed Walker will be better. I think Zach Tom will be better. I think Elgton Jenkins with the circumstances around him a little bit more settled will be better. And we'll see about Jordan Morgan. I think he certainly has the opportunity to be better than John Runyan Jr., but we'll see. And then Josh Myers, we did get some clarity on that situation, a death in his family. So our prayers and thoughts are with Josh Myers and his family right now. And so after that, what do you have? After that, what do you have? Like, I think Connor Williams could have competed to start. I think he would have probably been the best backup guard on this team for sure, and probably would have been someone who competed for a guard spot on this team. You could move Elgton Jenkins to center if you could play Connor Williams at center. But I'm not crazy concerned about the interior. Like, between Elgton Jenkins, Jordan Morgan, and Josh Myers, with Sean Rhyan in there somewhere, they're okay. That was essentially your group last year. If Jordan Morgan can be an upgrade on John Runyan Jr., you upgrade that slightly. But the question is at tackle. Yes, Zach Tom and Rasheed Walker, one of the best young duos in the league at tackle. But if one of those guys gets hurt, you are, a breath away from Kadeem Telfort or Andre Dillard, who was dreadful last year, has by all reporting been dreadful again in camp. I just don't know if that's the way you want to go here. Now, the list of players in free agency, it's not a great one. Donovan Smith, DJ Humphries, Charles Leno, Billy Turner, a familiar face at least. Dwayne Brown, who's, almost as old as Aaron Rodgers. Riley Reif could be an interesting one. Certainly plenty of knowledge of the NFC North. I think he's played for all three NFC North teams. You don't have a lot of options. And you're not going to be able to trade for anyone's swing tackle in the preseason because everyone needs a swing tackle. So you're really hoping that one of these guys hits for you. Now we're going to see in the preseason if that's a reasonable solution. And it would not surprise me if after, let's say, the Browns game, if it doesn't go great, the Packers do a little shopping. Would not surprise me at all if they at least give someone a call. DJ Humphries is not crazy old. He did at one point get a big contract with the Arizona Cardinals. I was never the biggest fan of his, but as your third offensive tackle, is he an upgrade over Andre Dillard? Yeah, he probably is. We don't know what his health situation is currently. We don't know what the asking price would be currently. So I'm honestly a little surprised that he hasn't been signed. He's only 30 years old. Was at one point a pretty good athlete. He is a little bit undersized, but in this offense, I don't know if that's a big deal. He's 6'5". It's worth a call. It's worth a call. I don't know if the Packers are going to be interested in doing that. This is one of those times where I think you're really testing the draft and develop ethos versus trying to compete right now. And you have to strike that balance. It's the same concept as, the risk versus reward of playing in the preseason. You want to develop your guys, but you also have to understand that you are ready to do this now. It cannot wait. And there is nothing more important than protecting your $200 million man. You have the receivers, you have the running backs. You've made the improvements on your defense. You've signed a new defensive coordinator. You have to shore up this offensive line by any means necessary, and that means exploring trades if you have to. But I do think someone like DJ Humphries makes sense as a phone call to make. Scour the August cuts. Is there someone, Jason Hirschhorn, our pal from The Leap and America's Guest, suggested maybe Yosh Nijman just doesn't make the team in Carolina, or that they may be willing to, basically trade him back to the Packers for a late round pick, something like that. Again, I don't know if that's something that makes sense. There were some extenuating circumstances here, reasons that he left. I thought he would get more on the open market than he got. What are the reasons for that? There's usually a reason. Right now, they need to do something. And if it doesn't go great on Saturday, I think that's when the wheels start to turn. And that's when, they also have a chance to see other people's tape, see where other teams are. Other teams have the chance to see their teams and go, hey, we actually feel better about this situation than we thought we would. So, hey, maybe we can work something out. Maybe the Packers have a surplus here that they can help someone out. Is there a receiver for offensive lineman trade that makes sense for someone? That's something to keep an eye on. We'll be back tomorrow. Cody Alexander from The Art of X, Match Quarters, defensive genius, basically, and friend of the podcast, is back on the show. And then Warren Sharp is here on Friday. His Sharp Football Stats have been something that I've used for a long time. He's I apologize for the pun, but a sharp guy in terms of finding edges with the data and the betting markets and all that fun stuff. And so I can't wait to talk to those guys. It's gonna be a fun week. And then we're live on Saturday after the game. Yes, we are. We are football sickos here. We are live on Saturday after the game. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast, Locked On Packers, wherever you get social medias. It is Locked On Packers. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, your podcast apps, so you can stay Locked On Packers.